All right, guys, well, welcome to week 12, Cognition 1. Let's get started. So this week is kind of a rough week just because I have a weird week at school, but we're going to do great. So let's start talking about thinking. Thinking or cognition is the mental activity that goes on in the brain when a person is organizing or attempting to understand information. Although some of you may be more familiar than others, thinking happens all the time, whether you're trying to figure out what you're going to eat for lunch, whether you're trying to make plans for next week, whether you're trying to figure out what you want to do for college. All those different types of things require thinking and planning and communicating. So, now one of the biggest ways that we use thinking or cognition is mental images. We kind of think about what we need to accomplish or what we want to get out of something, and we use a mental image to get there. Now, for instance, the example your book gives, which is actually a pretty good one, is if I ask you how many windows are in the front of your house, you think in your head a picture of your house, and you can now see that house, and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you count them up. That would be an example of mental images, and those are all just mental representations in our head that allows us to think about things much further beyond. Now, concepts is a little bit more challenging. Now, concepts is an idea that represents a class, category, object, event, or an activity. So a concept is an actual thing. Now, sometimes we have superordinate concepts. The most general form of time concepts, such as animal or fruit, are very generic. I don't like that they call them superordinate concepts. I think generic concepts would be better. They're very vague. Fruit, animal, pie. You got to get more specific. Now, a basic level type is an example of a concept around which other concepts are organized. So, dogs, cats, pears, grapes, oranges. Once you have a cat catalog, you can put down different types of cats. Once you have dogs, you can have different types of dogs: Dalmatian, golden retrievers, black labs, huskies. All those different types would fall under your basic level types. Now, when we deal with concepts, we have a subordinate concept, which is the most specific category of a concept, and it is one's pet or pair in mind. So when we think about one of those, it's a very personalized example. So when I think of cats, I think of Dunkin' and Donut and their stupidity and all the terrible things that they do that make me love them, sadly and most regrettably. So when people talk about cats, I automatically think of my cat. When I say dog, you will automatically think of your dog. That is a subordinate concept. Now, formal concepts are defined by specific rules. These are concepts like driving. Everyone has typically the same idea of what driving is because everyone has to follow the same rules. You drive on the right, you have to use your turn signals, you stop at stop signs. Everyone knows green is go, or yellow is caution, and red is stop. All those different types of things fall into your formal concepts. So it's rules that everyone has to follow. Now, natural concepts are concepts people form as a result of their experiences in the real world. So an example like that would be school. You have an idea of what school is because you've been to school for 11, 12 years at this point. So when you walk into a school, you already have a foundation of there's going to be classrooms, there's going to be desks probably in a row, there's going to be a teacher, there's definitely a whiteboard or a blackboard somewhere in the room, probably a projector at this point here in 2015, all those different types of things. Now, a prototype is an example of a concept that closely matches the defining characteristics. So a prototype would be the ideal example. Something like that would be, Miss Bennett is the ideal teacher. She's hilarious. She's funny. She knows her content backwards and forwards. And she always comes up with the best hilarious examples, obviously. Prototype. Now, when we deal with problem solving is the next major part. Now, problem solving is a process of cognition that occurs when a goal must be reached by thinking and behaving in certain ways. It is when there is an issue and you have to kind of think your way out of it. The example I used in class was the Tampa puzzle room or something, where you get trapped in a room and you have to solve the puzzle to get out. And you have to take all the clues they give you and all the secrets and all that stuff, and you have to work together as a team in order to get out. Sounds like a good time. Now, there's many ways to do problem solving. Trial and error is probably the most common. Trial and error is when you sit there and you try it try different things and tackle it in different ways. And with trial and error, this is like doing a math problem and you can't figure it out, so you continually try a little bit different. One of you said that when you have a multiple choice math question, you just plug in all the numbers for x. That would be a trial and error. A perfect example, actually. Now, algorithm are very specific step-by-step procedures for solving certain types of problems. When you deal with an algorithm, you're dealing with making sure that there is a specific outcome with a specific amount going in. This is your r squared plus b squared equals c squared, or, whatever that math voodoo you people do. It's like E equals MC squared. All of those different types of things are math algorithms, and they have a very specific plug and chug kind of thing to it. Now, when we do problem solving, we have to use our prior knowledge. When we do use our prior knowledge to help educate ourselves or help prepare us to answer the questions, it's called a heuristic. Heuristics are all based on our prior experiences. So, for instance, if there was a fire at school and you and your house have had a fire and you remember the experience, you would become a leader in that situation, being able to tell people to keep calm, telling people to get out of the room as quickly as they can. You would make sure that everyone is getting to where they need to be. Because of an issue that arises, with your previous experience, you're going to be able to think faster, problem solve faster, do all those things better. Now, means-end analysis is an heuristic which the difference between the starting situation and the goal is determined and steps are taken to reduce that difference. What that means is that you start someplace and you're not really ready or unable to make that step, so you're constantly reevaluating and pushing yourself. For instance, if you are hosting Thanksgiving for the first time this year, you are constantly looking over your list, creating lists, then to create another list in order to organize yourself. So by the time Thanksgiving actually gets here, we have plenty of organization and we know exactly what's going to happen. So means-end analysis is understanding that without proper planning for hosting a party, you are in big trouble. So I'm doing whatever I can to make myself comfortable with the idea of hosting Thanksgiving. Now, insight is a sudden perception to a problem, a solution to a problem. I use this most of the time because I think all the time. I'm constantly trying to process information. I have a lot going on all the time. So I am pushing myself to think. And sometimes I think best in the middle of the night. I wake up and I have an idea and it solves a bunch of my problems. Or I'm walking around saying, my God, I'm such an idiot. Oh, there you go. Here's what that was. Okay? Now, one of the big things that we are now talking about here in 2015 is artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is the creation of a machine that can think like a human, which means they can adjust their thought process, their ideas, carry a conversation, manipulate, and learn like we do. And that's exactly what happens. Now, when we deal with problem solving, we have many challenges. I don't know about you, I always can't solve the problem right away. So, some of the things that happen is functional fixedness. When a block to problem solving that comes from thinking about an object in terms of their only typical functions. Like, for instance, if you are trapped in a room and there is a fire going on, and for instance, there's no water. However, you have a bunch of flour, for instance, or cornstarch. You can put the fire out by using cornstarch, or you can try to suffocate it using other items. It doesn't always have to be water. So being stuck in a room with plenty of sand, but you don't have any water, you can still kill the fire. That would be functional fixedness, unable to see a solution because you have no water. A mental set is the tendency for people to persist in using problem-solving patterns that have worked for them in the past. So, for instance, I know this has happened to me so many times in math. I keep doing the same thing and keep getting the same results. This is called a mental set. It's when you essentially block out new information and you just keep doing the same thing, and eventually, typically, you kind of get through it, but most of the time you don't. Okay. Finally, we have confirmation bias. Now, confirmation bias is the tendency to search for evidence that fits one's beliefs while ignoring any evidence that does not fit those beliefs. We're going to see that a lot during this political campaign, whether you're whether you are politically right or politically left. The politicians are going to say whatever they think the people in front of them want them to hear. And then when they're in front of a different group of people, they're going to say whatever they think they want to hear. And you're going to see that they're trying to have confirmation bias, is that they want people to feel like they identify with them, whether or not they do. Now, here's an example of different types of situations. Okay, the dot problem. Okay, now creativity is the process of solving problems by combining ideas or behaviors in new ways. We use creativity all the time, coming up with ideas and thoughts, whether you're creating something, an artist, or anything like that. Now, there's two different types of creative thinking, convergent thinking and divergent. Excuse me. Convergent thinkers are like myself. I can take a ton of information and simplify it. Okay, tons and tons and tons of information and get simplified into one logical single answer. I can do that. Divergent thinker is when you have one starting point and then that person can come up with many different ideas and possibilities based on that one point. So a divergent thinker is when you can say, I need this, and then they come up with examples and examples of ways you can do that. Typically, your creative thinkers are divergent. Typically, your more logical people are going to be your convergent and be able to synthesize and stuff like that. Now, how do you get to become divergent? Brainstorming by coming up with as many ideas as possible, keeping a journal, carry a journal, write down your thoughts, all that stuff. That allows you to capture ideas and thoughts. Free writing, just writing down anything that comes to mind about a topic is a great way to really improve your creativity, as well as mind or subject mapping, making a central idea and connecting it to lines that connects to other things. All of these are going to make you more process-oriented. The more you think about things, the better you become as a thinker. The less you think, the less the less creative you're going to be, on top of the less intelligent you're going to be. Now, intelligence leads us straight into the next section. Now, intelligence is the ability to learn from one's experiences, acquire knowledge, and use resources effectively in adapting new situations or solving problems. Intelligence is based on many different things, and depending on who you are and in what place you are in life, that intelligence dictates differently. Now, the idea of intelligence, typically what we're dealing with here in 2015 is, especially for school, when you're being talked about by your teachers, your parents, stuff, they want to know how intelligent you are, how well you take tests, how well you study, how well you process audio information and turn that into thoughts, creative, all that stuff. When we deal with intelligence, we start with this basic foundation, and then we have expanded it into many, many different types of intelligence. Now, when we deal with intelligence, the first intelligence theory is by Spearman's theory, also known as Spearman's G theory. Now, he believed, and he is the first, so please keep that in mind, he believes that there is only two types of intelligence. The G factor is the ability to solve problems or general intelligence. So he believes that if you can solve and reason problems, you have general intelligence. And the S factor is the ability to excel in certain areas or specific intelligence. Now, when you talk about Spearman's theory, he believed most people were in the G factor, and the S, or the specific intelligence, were very few of the population. So about a range of 80% of people were general intelligent, while only 20 were specific intelligent. Now, for instance, if you are a writer, if you're a musician, if you were a singer, any of those types would be in specific intelligences. Everyone else would be in generalized intelligence. Now, the next major theory that comes up about intelligence is by Gardner. Now, Gardner believes in multiple intelligences, which range from verbal, linguistic, mathematical to inter and intra-intelligence, depending on what you thrive in the most. So, for instance, here's a list of all of his intelligences. Now, the verbal or linguistic is the ability to use language. So, writers and speakers, if you are a very good writer, you are a linguistic type of intelligence. Musical, ability to play and perform. Anyone who can play any type of music, guitar, piano, anything like that. Logical is all your math. If you're proficient in math and solve mathematical problems with pretty good ease, these would be your scientists and engineers. Excuse me. Your visual spatial are able to be able to understand how objects are going to be oriented in space. People who can design rooms, room designers, painter, like people who can do decor and all that stuff. You're also going to have artists. They can visually see something in front and before they start painting. Now, movement is going to be bodies control. These are going to be your dancers, your athletes. They can control all the way down to their toes exactly what part of the body is in motion, even when it seems completely crazy. Interpersonal is sensitivity to others, being able to see someone's expression and being able to kind of predict what they are thinking. Some of you are really good at it, some of you are completely oblivious. Intrapersonal is your ability to know yourself, your emotions, and how they guide your actions. Inter is between you and others, intra is between yourself. I am very intrapersonal. I know who I am. I'm very aware of my faults and I'm very well of my strengths. That's one of mine. A naturalist is the ability to recognize patterns found in nature. Farmers, landscapers, biologists, botanists, all of these people who really thrive in the science part. Now, an existentialist, their ability to see the big picture of the human world by asking questions about life, death, and ultimately the existence of humans. These are your big picture people who really thrive. This would be the guy who does Planet Earth. Doctor, he's done this huge miniseries and all that stuff. He would be one of those people. Now, when you look at this list, there's probably one that directly stands out, and there's probably 2 or 3 that you kind of like, oh, well, I'm definitely like that. There's typically one that people really attach to, and a couple other ones that, yeah, I get that. I can see that. Okay? So, according to Gardner, what type of intelligence is being shown here? The example is movement. Now, according to Gardner, what type of intelligence is being shown here? This is Albert Einstein, and we can say he's definitely mathematical or logical. Now, what type of intelligence is here? This is going to be visual spatial because of all the artists and the drawing and being able to understand its place in space. And what is this young man showing us? Musical. All right. Now, remember, Spearman is going to be the first theory. Then we have Gardner's theory. So we go from 2 to 9. Now we're going to have different types of theories of intelligence. Now the triartic theory of intelligence is Sternberg. Sternberg believes that there is 3 actual types of intelligences: analytical, creative, and practical. Now the analytical intelligence are the ability to break down problems into components or parts for analysis. So these are the people who are really good at understanding what's being asked and being able to assess it. So like your lawyers would be a good example. Anyone who has that kind of mindset. Creative is the ability to deal with new and different concepts and come up with new ways of solving problems. So you're very good at identifying what is useful information, what is not useful information, and focusing only on the useful and using it in a way that probably wasn't being seen by other people. And then you have your practical, the ability to use information to get along in life and become successful. I like to call the practical your street smarts. These are people who, without a ton of background knowledge, they just kind of have learned how to talk, to get along with, and to essentially get what they need out of people. My dad is definitely a practical intelligence. He has no real formal background in school, and my dad just has done incredibly well in business because of who he is as a person, how hard he works, but how much those connections are there. Now, when we deal with theories of intelligence, we also have an emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is the awareness of the ability to manage one's own emotions, as well as the ability to be self-motivated and to feel for others and socially skilled. Okay, now if you have this emotional intelligence, you're considered to be in a very good spot in your life. People who are emotionally balanced are the ones who are going to thrive and be successful. Now, yeah. Now, when we start dealing with IQ tests are based on IQ, which is your intelligence quotient. It's a number representing a measure of intelligence resulting from the division of one's mental age by chronological age, then multiplying that quotient by 100. You do need to know this formula. It will be on your test. It will be on your AP exam. So it is your chronological age divided by your mental age, then multiply that quotient by 100, and that gives you a score. Now, this IQ score is going to be created by the Stanford-Binet intelligence test. Now, Stanford-Binet intelligence test is going to be created by Stanford University, and it's going to be taking the Binet original intelligence test and fixing it and using this new thing called the IQ quotient. Now, the Binet intelligence test is the first intelligence test. The Stanford Binet is the second intelligence test and is the most practical, most effective, and most used intelligence test. The third intelligence test is going to be the Wechsler intelligence test. Now, this is dealing with verbal and performance scores as well as an overall intelligence score, and it is going to be used for adults. Your Stanford Binet is typically used on children up to age 21. If you are over the age of 21, you're going to take the Wechsler intelligence test, while anyone under the age of 21 is going to take the Stanford Binet. So, what are some phrased items? There's a type of items board with 3 differently shaped holes. The description of the item, child can place correct shape in a matching hole on board. So depending on where you are, age-wise will dictate what type of level of questions you're going to have. If you've ever had it, it takes about 3-4 hours. If you've ever done it via school, they usually break it up over 2 days. It's kind of fun. I've done it when I was little. You get to play with all different types of manipulatives. They ask you questions. You read passages and answer questions and stuff like that. So I remember it kind of being kind of a game. It's you and one other person, and they're sitting there taking notes and stuff like that. And it's pretty cool. Now, here is some questions from your Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. Now, information or verbal scale, what is steam made of? What is pepper? Who wrote Tom Sawyer? Will be different types of questions. When you look at like similarities, in what way are a circle and triangle alike? In what way are a saw and hammer alike? And you just have to be able to make those connections and explain in an articulate way if you want to get a high score. Now, the development of IQ tests is going to happen because of deviation of IQ scores. A type of intelligence measure that assumes the IQ is normally distributed around a mean of 100 with a standard deviation of 15. Remember that standard bell curve? Well, it's coming back. So when you have an intelligence score, your median is 100 and your standard deviation is 15. Now, the lower you are, obviously the lower intelligence you are, the higher the intelligence you are. Now, when we deal with IQ tests and cultural bias, we have to understand that IQ tests are not perfect. No test is, even mine. I know, I'm so surprised. Now, when we deal with IQ tests, we have to understand that there is a thing called cultural bias, which refers to the tendency of IQ tests to reflect the language, dialect, and content of the culture of the person designing the test. You will see that one of the big famous examples of cultural bias would be talking about up in the FCAT in like 2003, there was a question about snow on the 4th grade reading test about a little girl going out in the snow, and you had to know that snow would stop school buses from going, and that's why they had the day off. Well, here in Florida, pretty much no kid has ever had a day off because of snow. So they wouldn't have that background knowledge. However, a kid who is from the north would have that background knowledge, and that gives them a cultural advantage because of their northern roots. So those are the types of things you need to deal with, as well as most tests are written by educated doctorate educated white people. So they write questions about their culture. And most of the time, most people testing aren't all white people. So we see that there's a huge cultural difference there in just the wording of phrases and all that different types of stuff. Now, people from the same culture as the test designer are going to have a higher advantage, have an unfair advantage, which makes it unfair to the other people. So if a designer is a white Italian from Boston, I'm going to have a huge advantage because I'm a white Italian from Boston. So they may be referencing parts of Boston that a kid who grew up in Florida has no idea. And those are the types of issues we have to deal with. Now, culturally fair tests require the use of nonverbal abilities such as mental rotation of objects, thinking about things in a different context. Now, here are some examples of the Dove counterbalance intelligence test. A handkerchief head is looking at all of these things, would you know those answers? Money don't get everything, it's true. I mean, these are all kind of culturally identified items. Anyway, enjoy taking those quizzes, those little questions. And we have a big week. I look forward to hearing from you in class. Anyway, have a great week. See ya.